has always had a fascination with womanhood. From creepy little girls to the final girl trope, femininity is thrust into our attention again and again, whether it be via common character tropes like the damsel in distress, or the unlikely hero, or as the main antagonist of the film. While it is true that any film provides commentary, purposeful or not, on the nature of gender in our society, horror films maintain a unique position of explicitly addressing gender and femininity through a distinct lens of fear and anxiety, alongside fantastical and sometimes comedic elements. All of these components are true of Ginger Snaps, a film about death-obsessed sisters Ginger and Bridget Fitzgerald, whose lives are changed following a werewolf attack on the first day of Ginger's first period. While many viewers have noted its incredibly apparent puberty allegory, let's discuss just the nuanced way that womanhood is portrayed as a source of horror in the film. Although Ginger Snaps falls into a tried and true horror trope that links female puberty with abject terror, it also more intentionally subverts it through pointedly addressing misogyny and its impossible expectations. Ginger Snaps begins with 16-year-old Ginger and 15-year-old Bridget working on their school project about death. At school, we see that the sisters are isolated from their peers. Both are regularly targeted by a classmate named Trina for not fitting in with the rest of the girls, and they rebuke the sexual tension of boys. One day, Ginger shows signs of starting her period, something that excites their mother, as she sees it as the sign of becoming a woman. Ginger and Bridget, on the other hand, feel negatively about it. After sneaking out that night, the blood from Ginger's period attracts the attention of a werewolf, who attacks her and passes on an infection that turns her into a werewolf as well. Enlisting the help of a drug dealer named Sam, Bridget races to find a cure for Ginger's condition as it steadily worsens and changes her personality and physical appearance dramatically. While working on it, both sisters are involved in the accidental death and cover-up of Trina. This only gives Ginger further motivation to lean into her more animalistic impulses until Bridget is too late to save her. In the end, Ginger completely transforms, kills Sam, and then dies after plunging herself onto a knife Bridget held in self-defense. As previously mentioned, many critics largely see Ginger Snaps as a story about puberty. And as implied, Ginger Snaps is not the first horror film of its kind to focus on puberty in girls specifically. Arguably the most well-known films in the subgenre are The Exorcist and Carrie, the former about a girl becoming possessed as she enters adolescence, and the latter about a teen who discovers that she has telekinetic powers when she starts menstruating. Following the path set forward by these films, Ginger aptly refers to her period as the curse, reflecting the sense of dread that she and her sister have about this particular sign of maturity. In fact, Ginger and Bridget's motto is,
"Out by 16 or dead in the scene, but together forever,"
referring to a suicide pact they made as children to leave suburbia or die by their own hand as teenagers. The film proves the sisters correct in fearing puberty, as it's Ginger period that summons a werewolf and her gradual transformation from human to wolf, and from an androgynous outsider to a more straightforward seductress. With this in mind, it would be doing the film a disservice to say that the horror of the movie derives from puberty itself. Rather, the horror derives from what Ginger becomes. Namely, as she turns into a werewolf, she turns into a woman as well. The same is true of The Exorcist and Carrie, a trend that paints a broader picture of the way femininity and womanhood are perceived by society. In her book The Monstrous Feminine, Film, Feminism, Psychoanalysis, Barbara Creed writes, "The abject is placed on the side of the feminine. It exists in opposition to the paternal symbolic, which is governed by rules and laws. In order to enter the symbolic order, the subject must reject or repress all forms of behavior, speech, and modes of being regarded as unacceptable, improper, or unclean." Ginger and Bridget both meet the criteria of abject femininity prior to the werewolf attack. Their goth, unsophisticated style and detached attitude towards the rest of the world regularly provokes Trina and other classmates into calling them freaks and physically harassing them. After the attack, however, Ginger sheds this image and becomes more assertive, outgoing, feminine, and sexual, in addition to being considerably less risk-averse. While this drastic personality change brings Ginger closer to a more ideal form of femininity, her reputation among her peers doesn't change. Instead of only being a freak for being unconventional, she's a freak for being aggressive in her behavior and a slut for having sex with a classmate named Jason. Interestingly, by having unprotected sex with Jason, Ginger transfers the werewolf infection to him, thereby turning him into a werewolf as well. It's this development that illustrates the point that womanhood is inherently horrifying the best. Specifically, Jason as a werewolf invokes the same kind of terror and unease that Ginger does, but the two have drastically different endings. Jason is cured and never faces the consequences of his actions. Ginger, on the other hand, dies in the arms of Bridget. If the werewolf represents puberty and becoming a man or a woman, then this variance in their character endings reveals a deeper view of gender in society. Namely, regardless of what men do, they can escape culpability by virtue of being a man. All women must and will be punished. Although this seems like a just ending for Ginger given how much bloodshed she caused, this point is even more apparent when taking the way their peers treat them into consideration. Specifically, Jason was never deemed a freak or a whore despite behaving the same way as Ginger. Furthermore, this is both reaffirmed and contradicted by Ginger. After the accidental death of Trina, Ginger reassures Bridget that they won't be arrested for murder by saying,
Look, no one ever thinks chicks do shit like this. Trust me, a girl can only be a slut, a bitch, tease, or the virgin next door. We'll just coast on how the world works.
With this line, Ginger signals that she understands the social stratum that women exist under. Namely, they can only ever be defined by their sexuality or by the way men construe their assertiveness. However, what Ginger misses is that, by coasting on the way the world works, she ultimately meets her demise. There is no winning for femininity, a notion seconded by the death of Trina, the most stereotypically feminine of the teenage characters in the movie. As demonstrated by Ginger Snaps, femininity is both inherently transgressive and capable of being transgressed. Based upon personal perspective, Ginger can be seen as someone trying to embrace femininity but failing to do it correctly, or running away from and defying expectations of femininity. In this sense, Ginger can easily be interpreted as either a trans woman or a trans man. As a trans woman, Ginger is desperately trying to be a woman, but is unable to completely pass due to societal perceptions. There's obvious imagery to accompany this, like Ginger taping her growing tail to her leg and her obvious growth of body hair, but it's the rejection by characters like Trina even after she presents herself more femininely that readily lends the film to a transgender interpretation. On the other end, Ginger's transformation to a werewolf could symbolize an escape from femininity. While more abstract than a trans woman reading, her femininity becomes more obvious as she becomes more monstrous, creating a dire internal opposition that bleeds into her personal life. Ultimately, she cannot be accepted as either, but rather as a threat to others, leading to her ultimate demise. Both interpretations paint trans people as another, a gendered anomaly to be feared. This is a sentiment largely reflected in society through various manifestations of transphobia, whether it be medical gatekeeping to assure trans men say straight women, or violent crimes against trans women with the gay panic defense utilized successfully. With any of these possibilities, Ginger as a cis woman, Ginger as a trans woman, or Ginger as a trans man, the connecting conclusion of all of them is that anything that exists outside the realm of cis men is seen as threatening to the order established by them. What's left is a film that makes comedic jabs at the pains of growing up, but ends with a stark and sombering resolution that brings attention to the position of femininity and other gender derivatives in society. Ginger Snaps is a fun teen film that uses horror elements to its advantage, and one I recommend for a nice evening with deep implications about gender to work through afterwards.